Rounds 3 and 4 of the 2025 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship comes to you from Jeddah. We're on the western coast of Saudi Arabia for the very first time. We've been coming to this country since 2018, and now we are here by the seaside for the very first time ahead of Free Practice 2. It's race day here on the Cornish coast, and we're very excited to see what is going to happen over the course of the day. Qualifying action, and of course the first of 2 E-Prix to come here this weekend later on. But this is what the Jeddah Cornish coast looks like, and this is our calendar for 2024-25 as well. Season 11 of Formula E. Of course, we're here in Jeddah, then we head over to Miami in the beginning of April, over to Monaco, then we've got a bit of an Asian flavour for rounds 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. As you can see there, Japan, China, and then Indonesia. We head to Berlin for the penultimate weekend of the season, and of course, as always, we conclude it in London at the Excel Centre at the end of July. 2 winners in 2 races so far in 2025, but actually it's a man who hasn't led the championship, hasn't led a race rather, that leads the championship. That is Antonio Felix da Costa. Here is the entry list, the drivers that will be competing here this weekend. Pascal Wehrlein, reigning world champion for Tag Heuer Porsche. His teammate da Costa, as I said, the championship leader. And interested to see how these drivers are going to fare at a new circuit, a new challenge for them here this weekend. Well, the good news is the sun is shining, the drivers are ready to go out on track ahead of Free Practice 2. There's a lot of energy and atmosphere within the paddock here this weekend, and we're very excited to see what is going to happen in this second Free Practice session as it sets us up for qualifying later on here this afternoon. My name is Tom Brooks, alongside me David Coulthard and Katie Munnings here to guide you through the action. David, we had FP1 yesterday. It was a Nissan 1-2 at the end of the session. Oliver Rowland, of course, also riding the crest of a wave, fresh off the back of a victory in Mexico a month ago.
Yeah, I think it was a very positive start to Oliver Rowland's practice session here, and the Nissan team can be pretty happy. There was a few teams not quite as settled in. And what is, I think, I mentioned yesterday in commentary, I think it's a fairly straight forward street circuit as some of the Formula E challenges can go. There is some, I think the biggest challenge for them is getting through that bus stop section, but the rest of the track, as you see it unfold here on our track display, is a combination of high speeds, flowing, and then some good overtaking zones with some fairly wide entries into some of the hairpins.
Okay, so we're heading down in towards turn 13. This is where the attack mode will be activated in the race. It's quite a wide part of the circuit, but it does really bottleneck up as you come through those last 2 chicanes, doesn't it?
Yeah, they look pretty tight. I think that's where we saw some of the contact yesterday in the rookie practice. But yeah, it's about hitting the attack marker as well. We know that's been missed a few times, so we're watching out for that. Absolutely, yeah. The attack mode being activated there on the outside of turn 13. So here is the Jeddah Corniche circuit. You can see air temperature 27 degrees, 35 degrees track temperature. And of course, it'll be getting cooler as we head later on into the afternoon. The race taking place at 8 p.m. local time here in Saudi Arabia. So it will be significantly cooler. You can see the pit lane here at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. All the drivers and teams getting final preparations underway ahead of this second free practice session. And key to see what is going to happen when they head out onto the circuit for the first time. David, it's a lot hotter than it was for FP1 yesterday. Qualifying, though, is taking place this afternoon in the warmer conditions. So do you think this session should be more relevant for the teams heading into qualifying? Yeah,
all of the various sessions are the stepping stones towards the magical moment where you drive the car as quickly as you possibly can. So every one has its relevance, even if the track temperature is probably a little bit higher now than it will be, and certainly is higher than it was when they had free practice last night under the lights. It looks spectacular under the lights, but I think it actually looks great in the daylight as well. So they've definitely got options here for the future. And yeah, this is all part of the drivers building the weekend and gaining the confidence to know exactly how far and how fast they can push.
Well, just looking here at Taylor Barnard in the Neon McLaren Garage, second in the Teams Championship they are. As the green light comes on, we get Free Practice 2 underway as the cars head out of the garages and onto the circuit for the very first time on our first double-header weekend of the 2025 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. So they head out onto the circuit, and we look forward to seeing what sort of lap times they're going to be able to set. In terms of where we were lap times yesterday at the end of free practice 1, 1:15.8 was the quickest time set by Oliver Rowland. He was just over a tenth of a second in front of teammate Norman Nato, that Nissan 1-2. Nissan have looked quite strong so far this season, Katie, as I said earlier on, riding off the crest of a wave fresh off of that victory in Mexico. And we heard from Tommaso Volpe in FP1 yesterday saying that podiums, wins, that's the name of the game for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and they had great form last year. Oliver had a great year last year as well. I think that they're probably one of the strongest teams out there at the minute that's very consistent, and that's what it's about, isn't it? Points on different types of circuits. It seems like they can be pretty strong across the board wherever you put them at the minute. So I think, yeah, it's only free practice one, but as I was saying yesterday, when you go to bed knowing that you've been fast and it's race day tomorrow, it's a lot easier to sleep than it is if you know you've got a job to do overnight to try and find some pace.
You're quite right. This is the bus stop chicane section of the circuit. So we flick it through the left and then the right. That's turn 8 and 9, then 10 and 11, and then through on towards the fastest part of the circuit in terms of, I wouldn't call it a straight because it isn't really a straight. As you can see, it curves quite a lot to the left, but this is the quickest part of the circuit. You head down into this braking zone of turn 13. On the outside there, you can see the two lines just by the edge of the circuit. That's where the attack mode activation zone will be in the race. 8 minutes of attack mode available for the drivers in both of the E-Prix here this weekend, and they have to use that in 2 deployments. You can either do it in 4 minutes and 4 minutes, 6 minutes and 2 minutes, or the reverse of that, 2 minutes and 6 minutes. But we've got an added element to this weekend as well. Here today is the birth of pit boost, and we're looking forward to seeing what is going to happen with that, because essentially what it means is drivers will be coming into the pit lane in the race, coming to a stop for 34 seconds, and they'll be getting an extra energy boost in the race. It gives them 10% worth of energy, and it also adds an element of strategy. The first time that we've seen pit stops in Formula E since Gen 1. And David, what do you reckon to this one? Because you had to deal with pit stops in your Formula 1 career. What difference does it make from a team, a driver's perspective, going into the race knowing that you've got to come down that pit lane?
Well, it's another element which adds uncertainty and excitement. So the driver has to play his part in making sure that they practice their pit-ins. It becomes absolutely crucial that they basically arrive at the pit limiter perfectly. Not 2 kilometres over, not 2 kilometres under, otherwise you're losing time. So we're just getting a bit of team radio there, but yeah, I think also it's a great opportunity for Formula E to showcase technology and to show just how much energy can be added to the battery pack in that 30-second window, as you say, 2 seconds either side, allowing for sort of safe switching off and then re-engagement of the electrical energy for them to go back out on track.
Yeah, absolutely. There is Oliver Rowland. Then you can see last time out in Mexico City, qualified 4th. I went through to take the victory in emphatic style, Katie, as well. He had a window of opportunity that was presented to him, had the attack mode available that he was in. Then a safety car got thrown out, and we thought, oh, okay, well, that's his race scuppered. And then the safety car came in. He had about 50 seconds left of attack mode. He went through about 4 cars in the space of as many corners. Yeah,
I think attack mode is, I think it surprised everyone, to be honest, how effective and how much more powerful it's going to be this year versus attack mode in the past. I think that extra four-wheel drive, the drivers are loving it. And yeah, we're seeing a lot more overtakes, which is brilliant. I remember the first race in Sao Paulo, I couldn't believe it, and I think we were all so excited. The videos of in here in the commentary box when we were watching the race were hilarious to watch back because there was just so much going on.
Yeah, it was about 1.5, 2 seconds the advantage we had at Sao Paulo. A little bit less at Mexico City last time out, but so we'll see what that is going to look like in terms of the difference in lap times over the course of this weekend. You'll know when drivers are in attack mode because the lights that are on the back of the car will go from blue to a magenta pink colour, indicating the drivers are in full power. They go up from 300 to 350 kilowatts of power, and also gives them 4-wheel drive as well. So now we ride on board with our reigning world champion Pascal Wehrlein in the Tag Heuer Porsche. Currently sits 4th in the standings, hasn't taken a victory so far in the 2025 season, but we ride on board with him now as we come across the timing line and head down towards the first corner. Just talk us through this lap, David. What are we seeing here?
Well, turn 1-2 section is exactly as they use for Formula 1 Grand Prix racing. Making an adjustment there to his steering wheel, so not a full attack lap as he's building temperature and everything. Then we have this shortened hairpin turn 3 into 4, which I think will provide overtaking opportunity, especially with the attack mode.
Yeah, it's quite a wide entry going into turns 3 and 4, isn't it? Going into there. We did a bit of a track guide yesterday, and we think that there is a possibility, because it's such a late apex at that corner, you could just lunge your way through on the inside. Yeah,
anything with a slightly later turn in, then it just gets drivers excited to think, yeah, there's a gap. I can throw it down the inside and do what would in karting terms we call the block pass, which basically means it isn't going to be pretty. You're going to just sort of steal the line from the car that's on the wider line and then not really worry about how messy it is at the apex, because then that person is forced to stay wide. Where that goes wrong, of course, is if you've got someone behind you, then they can take advantage of getting a double pass on exit.
Now, Lola Yamaha apps, of course, apps we've seen in Formula E for a good number of years. They've been in every season of Formula E since the beginning, aside from one. And now they've got a new partnership with Lola, with Yamaha, and it's been an interesting burst so far. They haven't scored any points in terms of the races so far, but there's a lot of promise and a lot of hard-working names behind that team that have got a lot of racing experience. And I was talking to somebody down in the paddock yesterday, and he said, given Lucas de Grassi's experience in Formula E, he's got him down as a tip for a possible victory in the pit boost races here today, which on pure pace alone you would say is probably quite unlikely. But if there's a possibility of strategy coming into play, as we ride on board now with de Grassi.
I activated attack mode by mistake. I was trying to go to warm-up 2, but I didn't use 350. How can I cancel it?
Well, I've never heard of a driver mistakenly going into attack mode. I think that tells us where his mind is. He's already trying to think about race and how he can get best advantage. Small lock-up there as he goes down into turn 4, pulls it back into the apex. We've been part of this championship since the very inception, and actually results haven't really been there of late. Certainly one of the most experienced guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it will give him an opportunity of victory. They clearly are still trying to get on top of all the various systems, and a great onboard image there of what the driver sees looking down at his steering wheel. We can't see as clearly on the dashboard as he will all of the various parameters that he's controlling. Into this final corner, the attack mode's out on the wide there, a little bit wider of the apex than he would have liked. And actually, I called it completely wrong as to where I was on the racetrack, but hence I no longer drive.
Yeah, that's down to turn 30, just coming through these final couple of chicanes. So I've seen a couple of mistakes there from de Grassi, but as DC said, Katie, he is one of the most experienced hands in Formula E, and whilst the results haven't been there for him over the last 12 months, you couldn't bet against him in unusual circumstances. But pit boost is a step into the unknown for everybody, isn't it?
It is, but I like the fact that it's another element that gives teams that perhaps aren't there quite on the pace of the other teams another opportunity to do something different in terms of strategy. If you're in that position, you're thinking, what can we do that's going to give us a chance? You never know when the safety cars might come out. You never know when you might get lucky. So I guess it's one more element that they can play with.
Yeah, you can see in this phase that lock-up there that has been replayed from onboard. You know, we're still fairly early in this session, only 5 laps completed, so you'll now be starting to get stabilised tyres, tyre temperatures, tyre pressures. There'll be, what, 17.1 in comparison to the 15.8 you said they were doing in the cooler conditions last night. So there'll still be a lot of evolution to go in the remaining 31 minutes of this session.
I'm guessing it's only going to get hotter for quali. If quali's kind of, what, 3 p.m. local time, is it?
Yeah, well, is it not the midday sun that Mad Dogs and Englishmen should go out in? So
we'll keep you in here then.
Which it makes us Scots feel a little bit left out.
It's very offensive for me to say that to a Scot.
It's an old expression. I probably need to update it. Mad Dogs and British people.
Well, just over 10 minutes gone of the session so far then here for free practice 2. Let's head down to the pit lane, catch up with Saunders CB. He's with team principal for Andretti, Roger Griffiths.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, Roger, let's talk about the current standings as it is. You've got Jake up there in the top 3, Nico a little bit further down. That's sort of reflective of what we've seen so far this season. Jake's made it into the duels on both occasions, Nico hasn't. Is this the weekend that he's going to do it?
Well, we never know. I think it's a little bit of reflection on how we're doing the run plan for today. I think Nico is out there on a slightly different strategy. He's now pushing on this lap. If you looked on the previous run, Nico went fastest. Jake followed it up. You know, we're trying different things just to understand what is the best strategy in tyre preparation. So both of them are helping each other. So, you know, don't have the timing screen in front of me, but it could well be that Nico now pops towards the top of the timesheets as well. But, you know, they're working in sequence, they're working together. But, yeah, for sure, I mean, it'd be great to see both guys through to the duels. I mean, that's what we always try to achieve, because, you know, at that point you're starting no worse than 8th.
Absolutely. Okay. Yesterday in free practice 1, there was a lot of pit boost activity in the pit lane. So far, none. Is that more about focusing on 1 lap pace for this session?
Yeah, I mean, today, this morning is really about preparations for qualifying. You know, I'm sure there'll be some teams that will want to do something right at the end of the session just to make sure, because the next opportunity you'll get, well, you'll be doing it for real for the very first time. So you want to get that, perhaps a little last-minute butterflies out of the system for the guys, just so they're feeling refreshed. They've slept on what they did last night. Maybe they've found something that they can do slightly better. So I'm sure we'll see some people at the end of the session going for it.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Report 361, it says rear brake activated.
It's like a fail-safe there if the rear brake is activated, so a system needs reset.
Yeah, a bit of control on delete there for Robin Frijns, who's come to a stop at turn 13. Saw the car coming to a premature halt, and yellow flag now out at that corner as a result of that as well. He's quite close to some marshals, so if they have to recover the car, shouldn't be too much of a bother. We shouldn't be looking for a red flag at all. But yeah, not ideal for Frijns or for Envision, because it's a loss of track time, a loss of a chance to get used to the circuit in its current conditions. And as we head into qualifying, very important to be able to get as much mileage on board as possible for Frijns. So hopefully a relatively simple fix.
Some other news from Andretti I had from my old comms manager this morning, that one of their top stories is that Jake Dennis's dog Billy is bonding with Nick Cassidy's dog Milo on walks in Monaco between here and Mexico. So that's one of their top line stories from a team perspective this weekend.
This is the kind of news that we need in comms. This is, we have actually got a red flag, I do beg your pardon. So the red flag has come out, that'll be as a result of Frijns coming to a stop at turn 13, so they've decided they can't get the car recovered. And there is the Envision that unfortunately has ground to a halt. So what happens now is the timer counts down, as you can see. There is a possibility we may have a few minutes added on depending on the length of this red flag, but of course teams and marshals have got to make sure that they get it recovered as safely as they possibly can. Let's head down to Saunders once again, who's in pit lane. Saunders, what have you got for us?
Now just something to think about looking ahead to the race today and the race tomorrow, in kind of correlation with pit boost and yellow flags, red flags, that kind of thing, and safety cars, of course, because the rules state that if you are within that pit boost window and a safety car comes out or a full course yellow, you are allowed to come in and do your pit boost. So instantly, when that yellow flag came out, the pit lane basically became filled with people practicing that, seeing what the time difference might be, just getting used to that. What could, you know, knowing Formula E with yellow flags and safety cars, become a really realistic eventuality either today or tomorrow. So yeah, super exciting. One to look out for the races.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Saunders. Very good point there. There is a possibility of safety cars, especially on a street circuit such as this. So you see Robin Frijns managed to get the car going again, so whatever they've done to reset that, he's able to get it back into the pit lane. Then they'll be going through all the diagnostics and plugging something into the OBD2 port or whatever it may happen to be, and just working out exactly what's going on with that one. Hopefully get out before the end of the session. So Frijns then back into the pit lane. Just had a brief bit of team radio there from Marek Harachevsky, the race director. Now Scott Elkins moving on from that role as we head into Miami next month. And Scott, of course, been a mainstay in Formula E for a good number of years, and having to devote his energy elsewhere within racing and also within his personal life as well. So we wish Scott the very best for the future, and look forward to seeing where he'll be popping up, I'm sure, at some point down the road. So in the garage now then with Robin Frijns. Not an ideal set of circumstances here for the Dutchman, David.
No, but in actual fact, the fact that he's got back into the garage, they'll be able to plug that umbilical in, and they'll probably have an idea at this stage exactly what the issue is. And given that he was able to get back to the garage, then I'm going to assume software rather than any sort of mechanical hardware issue. Otherwise the car would be on the back of a low loader right now. So nothing worse than if you have a reset, stop on track, they push you behind the barriers and restart the session, and you miss out on any opportunity to do any further running.
Casey, you've had a lot of experience driving different electric vehicles over your time as well. You've also driven one of the Formula E cars recently as well. What's it like when, when something happens like that? It disrupts your run plan, and obviously they've got to figure out what's gone on with it and make sure that they can get it sorted for the rest of the session.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's complicated systems now. There's the advantages, you can change a lot while you're driving, and you have a lot of different options, but I think then also that brings the challenges that happen when you're pushing this technology to the limit. In terms of performance, things go wrong. Hopefully quick to fix though as well. It's all on the laptop then. You haven't got to spanner check everything, but yeah, my understanding though was if the rear brake was activated, you wouldn't be able to drive it. It would have to come back on a loader, so it doesn't sound like that's what's happened.
Yeah, hopefully for Robin Fries and for Envision a bit of a quick fix, as we say, and they get a bit more mileage as we look at some super slow-mos over the course of this session so far. So green flag waves once again. Well, that's a red flag actually, but the green light is on at the end of pit lane, and we now do get the session back underway. So FP2 resumes after a brief halt, and the Envision coming down the exit of pit lane there. I was just working out there, it's Sebastian Buemi, unsurprisingly not Robin Freitz.
Don't panic on that, there's only dry ice inside the cockpit, keeping the driver nice and cool.
It's very dramatic, doesn't it?
Like looking at a Whitesnake concert.
You're way too young to be calling out some bands like Whitesnake.
Oh, you should have heard my dad's music taste. I grew up on a diet of Iron Maiden and AC/DC in the car.
I remember being at Edinburgh Playhouse to watch Iron Maiden perform.
I've seen them a few times, I must say. They are still phenomenal, even today. Anyway, away from Iron Maiden and looking at Antonio Fitz da Costa in the garage at the moment. See the wheels off the car. He'll be chatting to his race engineer and working out where they can make improvements over the remainder of this session. Inside the garage here for Oliver Rowland as well. New teammate on the other side of the garage for him with Norman Natto. Norman hasn't scored any points so far in the 2025 season in Formula E, so he'll be hoping to try and get that monkey off his back. Started the weekend off in promising circumstances though, Katie, with second place in FP1. If he can continue building on that momentum.
Seb, we're currently the only car on track. If lots of cars exit towards the end of our prep lap here, our out lap, sorry, then we'll do a push 300 so we don't get traffic.
It's the voice of Connor Somerville there, race engineer for Sebastian Buemi, just as they try to find a bit of clear air on this circuit ahead of their sessions and ready to set their lap times. We look here then at Pascal Wehrlein. He's also making his way up for a prep lap as well. So Wehrlein is making his way through the bus stop chicane and on towards the back straight. Let's head down to Saunders with just over 20 minutes to go in the session. Saunders, have you got an update for us on Robin Freitz?
Yeah, Tom, I tried to find out a little bit more. I think they're just kind of assessing the situation still. It seemed like it was one of those cases of computer says no, where it just kind of turned the system off, and then when the red flag came out, it came back on and he was able to drive back into the pits. But they're obviously just making sure it is something small and not a problem. The team are hoping he'll get back out soon. No tyres on the car as of yet, but I'm sure they're just doing their due diligence.
Yep, computer says no then for Robin Freitz. So Sebastian Buemi tries to do the full Formula 1 layout of the Jeddah Corniche circuit there down at turn 4, just running a bit deep.
Yeah, had one car to navigate his way around the outside, but it didn't actually put him off the race line. So I think just a bit enthusiastic or ambitious on the brakes, but there's enough runoff there. And I think, again, labouring a point maybe that I've been making about this being a more open street circuit than many that they've raced on in Formula E, then it does give them some bailouts.
Yeah, certainly does. Looking here then at Taylor Barnard, he's been a great addition to Formula E. Youngest driver on the grid here, Katie. Got a podium in his first full-time race in Brazil at the beginning of December, and has helped McLaren to sit up in second place in the constructors so far.
Yeah, he's really done great, and I think the new talent coming into Formula E is great to see, because as Nicky was saying yesterday, once you get into Formula E, you don't tend to leave. There's so many that have been in since the beginning of season 1. It's such a specialist thing to drive. I think all of the drivers, when they jump in, they say that the thing that stands out to them compared to other forms of single-seater that they've raced is the feeling on the brake, obviously with the regen braking. So I think if you can master it, then you become quite valuable to teams in the future.
A lot of the rookies were saying that actually yesterday. You know, some of them have never driven a Formula E car before. We're just getting confirmation the session will end at 13:44, so that's 20. Well, how far away are we from that? Yeah,
25 minutes.
25 minutes, isn't it? So it's just slightly being extended. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, drivers that have not driven one of these Formula E cars, they jump into it, and it's a completely different experience from driving something with an internal combustion engine.
Yeah, but I think it's not just that, because the basis of driving, you know, for people sitting at home, you can turn left, turn right, you know, throttle and brake. But I would liken it to, when you mentioned there, Katie, about being a specialist, the squash world champion certainly wouldn't beat Djokovic, and it's a, you know, hand-eye coordination racket just with a slightly bigger ball. I think you've got to be so sort of niche at the world-class level to be able to take that last little thousands out of the performance. All these drivers are good. All the drivers in all forms of motorsport are good, but we're looking for exceptional, and the exceptionals are the ones that piece together that thousands in every single corner, and then, you know, lo and behold, they've got half a tenth or a tenth at the end of the lap, and you think, how did they do that? Well, margin by margin. Yeah,
there's those small details, the thousandths of a second, that make the difference, especially in Formula E. Just saw Max Günther hopping over the curbs, and Aeneas Penske, our virtual race engineer, says the track layout stresses the rear tyres and also the front tyres there for one of the neon McLarens. That's Sam Bird just going off down at the chicane. Manages to take to the escape road, thankfully, and gets out of harm's way. Let's get down to Saunders once again, who's with Thomas Biermeier from the Lola Yamaha app team.
Thanks, Tom. Just talking about Lucas Di Grassi there. He's had some good laps, but one of the first to do 350?
Yes, correct. He was the first on track using 350 2 times in a row, because we said we want not to get rid of it, but we want to do it quite early and focus now on 300 push laps.
It's always nice to see, because of all the records and accolades that Lucas has, pole positions and fastest laps aren't his strongest. So it's good to see him at least put good 350 laps in. Now, what I want to ask you is about the 20-place grid penalty. How you now re-strategize for the race to maximise your chance of points?
It will be a difficult race for us today. Clearly, we got with both drivers quite harsh penalties because of our reliability issues, what we faced in Mexico. Now we have to see. It's in Formula E, everything is possible, but we have a drive-through, or I guess with both drivers we have the grid penalty plus a drive-through, so it will be difficult. But today with pit boost, with maybe some safety cars or so, you never know in Formula E, so we never give up, and we try to maximize our chances, maybe to score 1 or 2 points at the end.
How much does the introduction of pit boost change the game when it comes to strategy? Does it allow for a whole other chance of scoring points?
It gives us a little bit more flexibility in case of strategy, and we will see. It's the first time for all the teams. Maybe some teams are doing small mistakes, you never know, and gives us one more possibility to try something different, and this we will see, and how it will work today.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you to Saunders, thank you to Thomas Biermeier, team principal for Lola Yamaha. Difficult weekend ahead for that team. Penalties courtesy of them, as we understand it, breaking a seal on the gearbox at the end of the weekend last time out in Mexico. So 20-place grid penalty for both of those cars. So they're going to be basically starting back in Diriyah. And also a drive-through penalty there as well. So not ideal for them, but Formula E, you know, we know how crazy the racing can be and how unpredictable it can be. There is a possibility, if it does all kick off, that maybe a better opportunity knocks than they maybe hope.
Yeah, again, you know, it's fairly common across motorsports, the carrying over of penalties, but I just don't like it. You know, I think that if you've done something wrong at the previous event, then there's got to be a better way than, you know, grid penalties and drive-throughs and things like that.
Scenario 8 and cool down. Scenario 8, cool down.
Yeah, keep it cool. Yeah, like maybe deducting points from the team or something else which has a meaningful disadvantage for the you know, whatever the misdemeanor is, but putting your driver basically at the back even before they've gone into qualifying, I just don't think that one event should affect the other.
Yeah, it is a shame for Lola Yamaha. I'm sure if there could have been a points deduction, they would have taken it, but they haven't actually scored any points so far this year. So it's been a bit hard to come by. But either way, there's good potential there for them for the future as they get all of their ducks in a row and get used to the new working collaboration for the app team with Lola and also with Yamaha, as we see the young Barbadian hotshot Zane Maloney out of the final corner, coming across the timeline, just improves up into 7th position. We heard team radio a few moments ago from Sam Bird as well. That was his race engineer, Stephen Lane, who he was having a quick discussion with. Bird up currently in 2nd fastest, and Barnard up in 6th place as well. So nice little session for them so far. Still plenty of time left to run. We are seeing the times now beginning to come down. The times now we're 15.6, so we're a couple of tenths of a second quicker than we were this time yesterday in free practice 1. So we're heading in the right direction. Track's beginning to get a little bit more rubbered in now.
Yeah, interestingly, I was just about to say, Oliver Rowland is yet to show his hand as he just delivers a 16.0, so just under 6 times slower than Günther. So, yeah, we're getting to the point of the free practice where they're certainly dialed in, everything's warm, drivers have built up a little bit of confidence and start to explore the limits of performance.
One of the things that's been a hot talking point this season, KT, is the Hankook tyres. Slightly softer compound, slightly different construction, and even more difficult to get them into that operating window. They're a softer compound, and they do actually wear that bit quicker. We saw in Mexico City, especially with that Peraltada, the long 180-degree final corner, the outside front was being incredibly worn. Do you think that's going to be a concern in the race this weekend? The circuit's obviously very different compared to where we were at for Mexico.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, from hearing conversations within the paddock, obviously I used to race with Andretti, and I used to, speak to Roger Griffiths, the team principal, about it a lot last year, when they were struggling with their qualifying, getting into the duels, and the conversation around tyres was always the first thing that was mentioned, and getting the tyre in the window in a very short space of time. I think it's a lot harder than, sitting at home, and especially for me as well, coming from off-road racing, is not as vital to, we're racing in sand and rock, so I haven't experienced trying to get a tyre in the window to this degree. I'm sure David has many times, but it had a lot more of an impact than I thought it would, and actually the science behind it is difficult to try and figure out, especially then if it rains, because they don't have much experience with these tyres in the wet. And we saw London a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember, when it was wet outside and then dry inside. I know it's a different tyre, but when you've got one set of tyres and you're not switching between slicks and wets, it is a very specialist thing to try and master.
Yeah, well, way back at the beginning of my race career, we had exactly that. We had in Formula Ford a groove tyre, which you ran the same tyre in wet and dry conditions. The only difference, that we were allowed to sort of bring the gauge of the tyre down by doing multiple laps. So you had less block movement, and of course you wanted a completely brand new tyre if it was wet to get as much block space to move the water. But most of what they do in Formula E is in these dry conditions. Softer compound, whether it's with groove or full slick. I've had that experience in F1 when we had the groove tyres. Ultimately, contact patch is contact patch, so you'll always take a softer compound if you can get it. And it's the black art of how you get the tyre to switch on. One thing that I would find a little bit less of a differentiator in essentially what is a one-make championship, I guess, in terms of tyre and chassis, is, yes, you can play around with damping and various other mechanical settings, but there isn't the range of variations that you would have in other formulas. So I would have thought that was less of a window of variation. So a bit worrying if that is a main topic, getting the tyre switched on.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to do too much of a problem here. The track obviously quite warm, and also the circuit just that bit slower compared to where we were at. Not any long and lazy corners. You've got the long turn 13, but you're not going quite as fast through there as you would be, say, in that final corner of Mexico. Drivers seem to be adapting to it quite nicely. It's all going well so far for Norman Nato as he's improving up into second fastest as well. So Nato seems to be adapting to this track quite well, just goes ahead of his teammate Oliver Rowland. So nicely done there for the Frenchman. He's taken one victory in his Formula E career, but that was back in 2021. He's had a podium since then as well, if you remember back in Rome for season 9 with the Nissan team. So he's got the credentials, we know that, but he's been a bit of a journeyman in his Formula E career. He's sort of jumped from team to team to team. Now he's back at a team that he knows, an environment that he knows. How important do you think that will be to try to get those consistent results out and hopefully allow Nissan to fight for that team's championship?
Yeah, I think, you're going to have learned different things from all the different teams, and I think he's probably got a lot of experience. He's, he's done a lot of races now in Formula E. But I think this is arguably one of the best performances we've seen of him recently. I know it's only free practice, but to be consistently at the top of the field, I know it's still early days, but with a decent 1:15.7 there in free practice 2, and then of course he was second yesterday in free practice 1. Nissans are definitely dialed in. And maybe he's, you know, Roland has been a bit more consistent than him over the last few races, and maybe he's been studying his data and trying to figure out how to handle the powertrain in the way that Roland's been able to do it over the last couple of years.
Well, Da Costa just goes up fastest there as well for the Tag Heuer Porsche team, so nicely done for him. What about Edo Mortara? Mahindra quickest in the rookie free practice session with Kushmani yesterday. Looking at Mortara here, you can see no points for him last time out in Mexico City, but he'll be hoping for a bit more here today. And Mortara does improve up to 5th fastest. Put himself onto the front row of the grid in Tokyo last year. Got a pole position at Berlin as well, so there's a good possibility for potential points on offer over the course of this weekend. And Fred Bertrand, I had dinner with him actually just before Christmas, sat down and was talking to him about what their plans are. He said, you know, where we were at the end of season 9 compared to where we are now is an amazing rate of progress, but it's one of those where we've got to continue making that progress. We can't sit there and be stagnant, because the moment you become stagnant...
D-cell into the second to last chicane with bad understeer at turns 15, 17, 18. I felt like
So a bit of team radio there for Dennis, just talking about some understeer in the car. But just going back to that point, DC, the moment you become stagnant, you're not making forward progress, you're going backwards.
Yeah, motor racing is relentless. It is a race without end, even though there's checker flags and you pack up and you head to the next event. But any success or failure is short-lived. You start first thing the next day is on to the next race. So we're wired wrong in that respect, in that we're never satisfied. And even if you win a championship, it's a short-lived experience and doesn't guarantee you're going to be in that position come the next year. So it's a weird old way to live your life, isn't it? To constantly be pushing, but it's adrenaline fueled and it's exciting, and when you get a group of people that are aligned in the form of a team. Because I've always found it fascinating to find bright people is not difficult, but to find a group of bright people that want to work together and want to find solutions and think of new ways of doing things is tremendously exciting. So as a driver and a non-engineer and someone that's never designed anything or built anything in his life, but you get to work with all these people, it's I think a great university of life.
I think the only thing that I've ever done practically is put up a set of shelves from IKEA the other week. So
never built technical Lego?
Oh no. Oh, technical Lego, I suppose, actually. Mind you, speaking of Lego, have you seen the McLaren that's down in the fan zone here? That's a cool piece of kit.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant.
Life-size replica of the Neil McLaren machine that you can buy in the shops, essentially. Absolutely amazing. Some of the levels of detail. I understand it took them 2 years to design it, and I don't know how long it took them to build it, but it's one of those things you wouldn't want to go and step on it in the night. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah, well, you need to be Shaquille O'Neal or someone to be able to step on that. You need to have a really big foot. It's a full-size car.
Yeah, massive plates of meat to avoid any significant discomfort. So just over 10 minutes to go of this session. Now have a look at this. This is Mitch Evans doing a pit boost test charge, and you can see the lights on the car. They flash white, but they flash faster white. It looks like a 90s rave as it gets close to the end of the charging cycle. So just over 30 seconds stationary, then the drivers will be able to get back into the race, and they're just making sure that everything's ready to go and they've got all their procedures sort of dotted the I's, crossed the T's into the race.
Yeah, I think inevitably there's an element of caution either side of that boosting element where it's a new introduction for Formula E, and they want to make sure that they don't cut it too fine. But I think over time, like any technology, that boosting time will be reduced, and also the sort of switching off of the vehicle and then re-engaging the energy will be reduced as well.
Yeah, certainly so. Looking here at Da Costa making his way through. He's just on a normal lap at the moment, so not on a full attack mode lap. You can see that indicator with the blue lights on the back of the car when they turn pink. We know that they're in a full attack mode and also in four-wheel drive, as well as having that extra power. It's interesting looking at Da Costa's car. You can see just how different the body language is of this machine in two-wheel drive compared to four-wheel drive here, Katie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think You made me laugh yesterday, David, when you said it makes you feel like you're talented when you're in four-wheel drive. I think that's the perfect way to sum it up, actually.
It just goes anywhere you point it.
I think also you could make a few more mistakes and get away with it. You know, on corner exit, I think having four-wheel drive is kind of more what I'm experiencing than rear-wheel drive, I'd say. I certainly prefer it.
Yeah.
But then I think my single-seater experience in rear-wheel drive is very limited.
Well, just as a sort of expansion, so we cover all drives, I think front-wheel drive should be illegal.
No, see, I disagree. I think everyone should learn to drive in front-wheel. I used to work up on the ice lakes, and we would teach people real weight transfer balance in front-wheel drive to show them how to turn in using the nose and not just being throttle happy in a rear-wheel drive.
You can do weight transfer in a rear-wheel drive car. The reason why I think it should be illegal is that when you start to oversteer on a front-wheel drive car, instinctively you would lift to slow down from the potential accident. But front-wheel drive, you have to accelerate to pull yourself out of the oversteer.
As someone,
I rest my case, Your Honour. I think I have the compelling argument.
I think we're both coming from very different sides of motorsport, probably.
I'm going to grab David Dickinson's gavel in a minute and bang it on the table. I have to say I'm an advocate of front-wheel drive because I compete in amateur rallycross, and without that I wouldn't have a drive.
Well, there we are, 2 against 1.
It's a majority verdict, Your Honour.
OK, I submit.
Let's go down to Saunders, who's catching up with Robin Fries. Fries, of course, came to a stop on the track earlier on at 10:13, got back into the pit lane, but we haven't seen him out since. What's the latest down there, Saunders?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, Robin, not the best start to the day today. What can you tell us? And any chance of going back out before the session's over?
I don't know exactly what happened. The car just went into a failure mode into 13. Luckily, in a cool-down lap, the brake went long and I stopped. I tried to reset the car twice, and the second time it worked. So they need to change the rear end with a different engine in. But it's sad in many things because obviously we cannot really prepare for qualifying. We cannot scope the new set for qualifying like everybody else is doing. I don't have the data for qualifying, so the boys are pushing hard to make it for qualifying, but then again you go in with a big disadvantage, so we try to make the best out of it.
So are you needing to change a component? There might be a penalty associated with that, or?
No, I don't think so. We have 2 for the year, and this is the first one, so we put the second one in, and yeah, see how that goes.
Naturally, you would have preferred to have more time out on track, but with that aside, how prepared do you feel for not just qualifying, but also pit boost when it comes to the race?
Well, we were trying to do another pit boost to test today in FP2, but unfortunately we didn't because we're standing in the box. So yeah, again, there's many things that is a bit of a disadvantage for us, not driving. Also the new tires, as I said, in qualifying. So yeah, and then the first race, qualifying will be very important because overtaking will be very difficult. So if you don't start in the top 10, you make your life very difficult. So yeah, it's not going to be an easy one.
Well, we've seen multiple times what you do when your back's against the wall when it comes to qualifying. So yeah, looking forward to see what you can do.
Yeah, normally when I get a bit angry, I do some crazy stuff. So let's see.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks to Saunders. You have to feel a bit sorry for Robin Fries. If he fell into a barrel of shoes, he'd still come out barefoot sometimes. He never seems to have any luck at all, does he? But hopefully he's able to turn his fortunes around. If you remember back to Jaguar's problems in London at the end of last season, it was Nick Cassidy on that occasion who had an issue and then went out and scored an emphatic pole position. You can see the pit boost charge situation going on at the moment down in the box here for Mitch Evans. Just making sure again that all the procedures are ready and correct ahead of their final runs in the session. Just over 5 minutes to go left of this one. It's interesting actually because one thing you noticed on the timing screen, DC, though he's now out on track, Sebastian Buemi, he's done a lot fewer laps compared to everybody else. Do you think that might have been as a precaution for the team?
Yeah, I think so. They must have been trying to understand exactly what caused the reset or the long brake pedal, and you know, good mature decision I'd say from the team, but they obviously feel it's an isolated issue on Robin's car, so Buemi is now out on track. And just looking at the spread of times, you can really see as everyone now starts to focus towards qualifying, you've got what less than a second covering what is the top 18 cars.
Yeah, it's very close.
That is around a 3 kilometre plus 1 metre, as you had repeatedly pointed out to me over the course of the weekend. But let's call it a 3K track. That is incredibly tight when you start breaking down the elements, the corners where people can make a difference.
Oh, just looking at Nico Müller there pushing the. In fact, I think that might have been Jake Dennis, beg your pardon, just pushing the envelope, coming through that chicane right up against the wall. He was personal best there in the second sector. It's going to be an improvement here for Dennis in time, but not in position, so he stays 18th quickest at the moment. What about teammate Nico Müller? He was fastest overall in that first sector. Lap time's now beginning to come down in these final stages of the session. They're just doing a few qualifying simulations now. Just a reminder for qualifying how it works in Formula E. If you are new to it, first of all, welcome along. It's great to have your company. How it works is we have 2 sessions, Group A and Group B, 11 drivers in each. 4 from each group will go through into the duels. We have the quarterfinals, then the semi-finals, and then the finals. This is a look at the moment for Dennis, right up against the wall. You can barely get the width of David Coulthard's wallet between the tyre and that.
Yeah, look, Bitcoin doesn't take that much space.
Very close quarters there for Jake Dennis. You can see he was slightly wide on the entry into that corner there as well, wasn't he? Just pushing the envelope a bit more.
Yeah, that's that understeer that we heard him reporting to his engineer, understeer and entry, which on the street circuit particularly, you've got to have a front axle that takes you to your apex. That's your confidence. That's the building block of being able to carry speed and gain the lap time. Always a lot more time on the entry phase than you can't really out-accelerate someone, assuming you get on the power at the same time, but you can definitely outbrake them, carry the speed to the apex.
Got a brief yellow flag down at turn 4, that's the hairpin, and it's a red flag actually, it's turned out to as well, so someone looks like they've come to a stop. It could be, yeah, it's the Maserati. Oh, and also Nick de Vries.
Yeah, has that been a sort of misunderstanding, the likes of which we saw in the rookie test? So they've been squabbling over the same piece of tarmac.
Yeah.
Shouting there, or was that background noise?
Possibly a bit of shouting.
That may well be the noise, the voice in your head. You've shared with us and the audience. Was it someone going, Katie?
Thank you very much.
Marek Hanachevsky there, the race director. So we were just wondering exactly what's gone on. So Stoffel van Dorn and Nick de Vries looks like they've had a bit of an incident. You see front wing damage there for de Vries in the Mahindra, and we saw a miscommunication in rookie free practice yesterday with Zach O'Sullivan and Jamie Chadwick. They came to blows. So let's have a look then. That's the Maserati of Jake Hughes going through. Oh, hang on. So Van Dorn moved over on the line, and de Vries was coming through at a fair old rate of knots on the inside. Let's have another look, see if we can piece it together a bit better.
Yeah.
So Van Dorn's on a slow lap here.
Yeah, there you go. He's making some adjustments and taking the normal racing line, and as he starts to go in towards the apex, Nick coming at some speed, and presumably was that even a hot lap?
It's exactly what we saw in the rookie test.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's so many blind corners here, but you know, of all the places you'd expect to come up against the driver, I would have thought it would have been a faster part of the track. You know, one of the blind quick corners, but you know, going into there, well, I mean, clearly a miscommunication has gone on somewhere down the line, and what it's done is it's disrupted Nick de Vries running and also given Mahindra a bit more of a parts bill to worry about.
Yeah, so that won't be an issue come racing, because no one's going to be on a sort of cruising lap, a build lap, going up into turn 3 into 4, but we've now seen it twice in free practice. So I think the nature of the fact that you've got the curvature through 3 into 4 is catching some drivers out, and it comes down to track management. The engineers have to keep the drivers more involved and informed.
Nothing. It's the same again. I've locked at turn 13 every lap. Yet the sister car can brake later, more pressure, and doesn't lock. What's going on?
Well, that's a frustrated Jake Dennis, I think is putting it quite politely, because he didn't. It was a problem for him all of last season, actually, the feeling under the brake pedal. He really struggled with it, and you can hear audible frustration there for the Season 9 World Champion, that he's just not happy with the balance of the car under braking coming into the corners. So confirmation that the session will not be resumed. That late red flag thwarting any running and also stopping anybody putting those last dash qualifying laps in as de Vries makes his way back into the pit lane. And we wait to find out exactly what they'll be saying at the end of the session. Barnard also making his way back in the Neon McLaren as well. So all the 22 drivers now back in the box as the session is concluded somewhat prematurely due to the incident there between Stoffel van Dorn and Nick de Vries. And there is Van Dorn just exiting out of the garage, and well, whether that was a miscommunication between himself and his race engineer, or whether it was just a brain fade. We're not 100% sure at the moment, but either way, not ideal at all. Let's head down to Saunders at the end of free practice 2 then. Antonio Felix da Costa, championship leader. He was the fastest man at the end of that session.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, you said it there. Championship leader and the fastest man in that session. Feeling confident with the car ahead of quali?
Yeah, that was a pretty clean session for us, so it's exactly what you want as a driver going into a qualifying session, so no issues, went to plan, had a couple of red flags, but we reacted well to them. But now this doesn't matter. Quali is upon us, and we have to do the same there, and I'm expecting everybody to do some steps forwards. We're going to clean up some things on our side as well, and hopefully make it into the duels, and then anything can happen from there.
Let me try and get into da Costa's mind. Right now, okay, you're top of the timesheet, things are comfortable in the car. Do you just stay as you are, or do you now think, oh, I can push a bit further?
It's a good question. I think my driving can improve in a couple of places, but we're not talking 20% improvement. We're now going down to the little last 1-2%, later braking here, better apex there. Same with the car and the software and everything. So it's just, as I said, cleaning up, you know, and yeah, just do the job. I mean, the package is strong, which is nice, which gives me confidence that if we do everything right, we should be okay. It's a nice place to be. I've been on the other end of things a few times, and I've been on this side of things as well a few times, so yeah, nice and easy for now.
1% can go a long way. Thanks, Antonio.
Thanks, Saunders. Thanks to Antonio Felix da Costa, quickest man. I suppose that's the paradox of a racing driver, isn't it? That you get to enjoy the brief moment of being on top, and then, sure enough, 30 seconds later, you're already thinking about what's coming next.
You had a brilliant analogy for it at breakfast this morning, DC, when you said the goldfish brain each lap. What was it that you said?
Well, I said that racing drivers are the sporting equivalent of goldfish, because we go around in a circle and go, oh, that was fun and exciting, let's do it again, and we do that as many times repeatedly. But it's a wonderful thing going round and round in circles.
It is, and being quick at it as well, even better.
Not so good, though, when you end up coming together with another competitor, especially in free practice. Nick de Vries and Stoffel van Dorn then coming to blows at the end of that session, bringing out an early red flag. So confirmation of the results at free practice 2. Antonio Felix da Costa quickest of the lot, then ahead of Max Günther in the DS Penske. Jake Hughes up in 3rd fastest. Saudi Arabia has always been a happy hunting ground. He got his first ever pole position here a couple of years ago. Ahead of Norman Natto, leading teammate Oliver Ronan, then Mortara, Muller, Bird, Pascal Wehrlein and David Beckman, the 2 German drivers, rounding out the top 10 in the Porsche and the Cupra Kiro there respectively. And the unfortunate thing about that early red flag is it thwarted a lot of drivers' chances to set quick lap times at the end of that session. So it means that Stoffel van Dorn, who ended up in the wall with Nick de Vries, end up in 11th and 12th. So they were together on track, both metaphorically and physically as well, unfortunately. Verne in 13th ahead of Maloney, Tickton, Buemi, Taylor Barnard, Jake Dennis, who was complaining about problems under braking and also understeer as well, so work to do for the Andretti team. Ahead of Nick Cassidy. What is going on for the Kiwi at the moment? He just can't seem to get in much of a rhythm. He's ahead of Degrassi and his teammate Mitch Evans and Robin Freitz there in 22nd and last place. So drivers now making their way into the weighbridge, just making sure they all comply with the regulations ahead of qualifying coming up very shortly, actually, as a matter of fact. Kicks off at 3:20 local time. That's about an hour and a half's time there and thereabouts. Looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. DC, if you're a betting man, have you got anybody that your money would be on going into qualifying for pole?
Well, coming into this morning, I was pretty confident that Oliver Roland was, you know, hit the track well yesterday and looking pretty confident. But he's there or thereabouts, isn't he? But 3/10 is 3/10, so. But I'm still going to go with him.
I like your, I like the optimism. Nick Cassidy here, just looking at the body language of him, Katie, doesn't look like he's particularly pleased with how things are going so far.
Yeah, I think a difficult morning for both Jags, actually. You can see Mitch Evans second to slowest there. Yeah, they have their ups and downs as a team, don't they? Definitely. But I'm supposed they can find a few things in the next couple of hours. We've seen stranger things happen for him, as you said, to go and put it on pole after doing a couple of laps in free practice 2 in London last year.
Yeah, there's a good opportunity for things to turn around, and you never know what they might be hiding up their sleeve. The thing is with teams like that is they will be doing a lot of work back at base, in Oxford as well with their simulator and so on and so forth. Anyway, free practice 2 is all done and dusted. Our next time we'll see these drivers out is for qualifying, and the fight for pole position kicks off at 3:20 local time. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you then.